The National Assembly has passed the Electoral Amendment Bill with 232 voting in favour of the bill. Now, the bill paves the way for independent candidates to stand in national and provincial elections. Those in support were the ANC, the EFF, the PAC, Al Jama'ah and the NFP. The DA, the ACDP, IFP, Freedom Front Plus and COPE all voted against the bill. The Good Party and the AIC abstained. Now, the bill had to go for a vote after the DA called for a division. Now, the Concord declared the Electoral Act unconstitutional as it required that adult citizens may only be elected to the National Assembly and provincial legislatures only through their membership of political parties. Zwelinzima Vavi is the Secretary General of the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU. He joins us now via Zoom, along with Terry Tselane, who's the Executive Chairperson of the Institute for Election Management Services in Africa. He's also a former Deputy Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Vavi. What is your take on this bill that's been passed?
Well, the fact that so many MPs, hoping 252, would have voted for this bill, despite its obvious shortcomings, and despite them knowing that it will not pass the test that has been set by the Constitutional Court in 2020 when it ordered Parliament to pass a legislation that will allow individuals, independent candidates, to stand for election in line with the provisions of the Constitution that says every citizen of this country have the right to elect and to be elected into any political office. Now, the fact that so many MPs will just close their eyes and follow the leadership underlines, in fact, underpins the reason why we needed a different direction to the direction that has been chosen by our National Assembly today. Because it is actually the party system that produces psychopaths in Parliament who have no qualms of trampling against their own consciousness in order to please the party bosses. It is precisely because of this drive towards self-preservation that the leadership today would have ignored the voices of reason coming from all South Africans of reason who have started the bill and who had made a call on Parliament not to pass the bill in its current form, and to make sure that the bill at least complies fully with the dictates of the Constitutional Court of 2020. It is precisely because of these levels of psychopathy in our Parliament that have allowed our country to be where it is today, a country with worse inequalities, worse unemployment, worse levels of corruption and crime, worse levels of poverty, and you name them all. We are walking right down the path of a failed state, notwithstanding that we have about 400 people assembling who are supposed to hold the executive to account every now and again, something that they don't do effectively, such that we can realize the dreams of our people to build a better life for all. So today is a very sad day for South Africa because the parliamentarians, in their drive towards self-preservation, decided that one, they must vote in a bill that is so unfair against anybody who may wish to stand as an independent candidate in the elections in 2024. From the start up to the end. For example, first example is that
all right. You know what? We'll unpack that a little bit more just now. I just want to get a sense from Terry Tselane. if you could explain it in simple terms for us, what was and what this bill now does. So I am voter A. I go to the polls. What was its situation before? And with this bill, what will I see in front of me and what will I be voting for?
Thank you very much for having me. And just want to indicate the following. That in terms of the Constitutional Court judgment, what was supposed to have happened is that the Parliament is supposed to have taken consideration information about the constituencies, demarcated the country according to constituencies, and having divided the country according to constituencies, you would have ballot papers that would be for the province, for the national, and for the constituency where you are. Francis Labet had suggested a certain number of constituencies. And I had thought that Parliament would actually go to the demarcation board and give them powers to demarcate the country according to constituencies in order to be able to enable voters to choose a candidate in their constituency. But what Parliament has done, and then we must not see this thing as though it's a political campaign. It's an attempt to try to assist Parliament in order for them to be able to do the right thing. So, firstly, they decided not to go according to that process of having to identify constituencies. They just turned provinces into constituencies, and they call them regions. And having done that, they then went on and basically disempowered those other citizens. Because this is not about independent candidates, by the way. It's about adult citizens' rights as enshrined in Section 18 and 19 of the Constitution, to be able to stand for office and to be elected into office. Now, what Parliament has done is that they have curtailed the capacity of adult citizens to be able to stand for office. Firstly, it's on the issue of the requirements to stand for office. A political party to stand for political office requires 1,000 signatures. And now, according to the new bill, if an independent wants to contest for an election, that independent has got to get 20% of the number of votes that a party would get in order to get a seat in Parliament. Now let's take the last results of the elections. It basically means an independent must get 20% of 45,000, because in order to be able to get a seat, you've got to get at least 45,000 support as a political party. Now, the bill says 20% of 45,000. It means for an independent candidate, you need at least 9,000 votes to be able to stand for office. Unlike a political party is required only 1,000 votes. And the political parties have got the infrastructure. Now, if you're coming as an independent who wants to contest for office, you've got no infrastructure, but at the same time, you are required to have 9,000 votes as opposed to that party, which is just 1,000 votes. But the second aspect of this is what I always refer to as a withering away of the seats of independence. So if an independent dies or vacates office, the votes for that office, they are then allocated to a political party. So there are no by-elections.
Wow.
So a constituency that had elected Zwelinzima Vavi as a candidate no longer has a right to appoint or the elect another candidate, because Zwelinzima Vavi has either died or has vacated office, and then therefore they take all the votes to a political party. That's what I refer to as the withering away of the seats of independence. No by-elections, nothing. So it defeats the whole purpose of why, in the first instance, you had to have constituencies. Because if you've got constituencies, then it means once their candidate is no longer there, then they must have a right to be able to elect a new person in that particular position.
All right, I understand.
But not in this case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Vavi, what it sounds like is trickery at play here, and they haven't complied with the Constitutional Court order at all.
Not at all. In fact, this is a very poor attempt if they were, in their view, trying to comply with the directives of the Constitutional Court. And this one is just the opposite. It goes to the opposite. It's not that in South Africa we do not have a system that the Constitutional Court ordered. In the local government, there is an ideal of what we're talking about should prevail at both national and provincial level. At the local government election, you have a proportional representation system, which is the most democratic system in the whole world. And but also that PR is battered and buttressed by a constituency-based system, meaning that within the PR system, you still allow citizens who are in the particular boundary to elect a person they have confidence that will be accountable to them as citizens. So that's what is happening in the PR and the constituency-based system at the local government. These guys at the National Assembly knows that. Some of them would have been PR, some of them would have been constituency candidates in councils, but when they come to the national level, worried about what will happen to them, because let's be frank here, as I said in the initial introduction, this is self-preservation at play. The members of parliament know that our people have already voted them out when it comes to expressing no confidence in the political system of South Africa. 2/3 of the people who should be participating in the elections didn't participate in both the national and local government, the last ones at least. They know that they enjoy no confidence, and they know that if they were to be asked to go out and go back to their constituencies and say, please elect me because I stand for ABCD, a lot of people will throw eggs in their faces because they have dismally failed to account, they have dismally failed to take the aspirations of their own working class constituencies in particular to parliament, so that when we listen to the budget speech of the minister next week on Wednesday, the medium-term policy budget framework statement, which is going to be an anti-poor austerity budget, the constituencies can ask, so what have happened? Why you want to cut the budgets for our for electricity provision, for crime prevention strategies, for healthcare, education, you name them all. They know that they wouldn't be able to stand in front of any constituency in South Africa, so they're hiding behind the flag of a political party, and that's where they're wanting to find some form of a refugee status within the party system. The bill that they have passed is purely entrenching the current political party system. It's purely designed to ensure that if you were to stand as a candidate, as Peter Ndoro, you will stand no chance. The examples that Tselane is making is that if you were to stand as a candidate, you will need 8,000 people to 9,000 to say, yes, we believe that Peter Ndoro can serve us here. But if you are a political party, all you need is 1,000 to be registered. And in the bill, you will need a 50,000 to go into parliament. And that's it. Any political party that multiplies that by 50,000, it means it have this equal numbers of those 50,000 going to parliament. But if you come as an independent, only the first 50,000 is cut, and the next 251 million is not counted into the equation at all, which means that why would you want to put in candidates that can only have one representation based on defining of the province as a constituency? It's an impossible situation, and that's why we think that this bill must not be signed by the president. That's the call we want to make, and above all that, we want to warn them that we will challenge this with a coalition of civil society organizations in the Constitutional Court if the president signs this into law.
Okay. Mr. Tselane, a comparison has been made to local government elections, and I just wonder, could the bill have been improved upon the local government elections? It's there, it works. Could they have done more, perhaps?
Absolutely. Immediately after the Constitutional Court judgment, I suggested that the demarcation board should be given the powers to demarcate the country into constituencies, because the demarcation board has got the data sets of the country. They know how many people live in a particular area, and they could use those data sets to demarcate the country into constituencies. But strangely, the demarcation board was not actually brought into this. They were not part of the conversation. In fact, nobody in Parliament thought that it was actually important to go to a body such as the demarcation board to divide the country into constituencies. Now, you've got a situation where basically there is no work that has been done in terms of cutting the country into constituencies, and therefore Parliament took a shortcut by turning provinces into constituencies, and they call provinces now regions. And on the basis of that, then the person has got to compete in a province to be a candidate. That on its own, it's already disadvantaging you, because it means you've got to campaign for the whole area in the whole province in order for you to be accepted as a candidate. But as Zwelinzima Vavi was saying, even if you got out of 16 million voters, you got 16 or 18 or 15 million voters supporting you, you will only get one seat, and the remaining number of votes will be discarded. But if you are a political party, you will get the number of seats based on the number of votes you have received. So already there is no equality in terms of the value of a vote between a political party and an independent candidate. So those are some of the difficulties that I think we have here. And then that's what I'm saying. Parliament is supposed to have taken this advice to say, based on what we are seeing, we think that it is not appropriate for them to pass this legislation, because this legislation is defective in many respects, and it does not really empower independent candidates. Or, in fact, before we even talk about independent candidates, we must talk about what the Constitutional Court said, which is adult citizens to be able to exercise their rights in terms of Section 18 and 19 of the Constitution. In other words, for adult citizens to be able to stand for office and to be voted into office once they've made themselves available. So
All right. I
Parliament,
understand.
unfortunately, seems to have looked at this thing wrongly, as though it is about the issue of independent candidates. It is not about independent candidates. It's about adult citizens, as the Constitutional Court has indicated, being able to stand for office and being able to be elected into office.
All right. Mr. Vavi, I'm going to ask you to put on your political hat now. I want to understand the split in the votes, the parties that voted for and the parties that voted against, because it seems to me, when I look at the parties, they both have gains and negatives in the same proportions, but for some reason, they've gone different sides. I'm trying to understand that.
We must first express appreciation to the parties that stood on the side of the Constitution and on the side of the dictum of the Freedom Charter and the Constitution of this country that says the government must always be based on the will of the people. We want to salute the UDM, and we want to salute even the other party that voted with them. There were just 98 voters in Parliament who opposed this bill. The overwhelming said, no, this is fine. This is an assault on the Constitution of South Africa. This is an assault on the very dictum of the Constitution that calls on the government to be based on the will of the people. This is meant to undermine the will of the people. But more importantly, as I said, this is people who are refusing to read the signs coming from the last local and national government, that our people have no confidence in the current system whatsoever. 2/3 of them refuse to go to the voting polls to exercise their right. And because they have been disenfranchised by the system, and they have been robbed of their right to hold their members of parliament accountable, and to get the report backs and to make them to receive mandates based on the concerns that they have, be they in the rural areas, poverty-stricken, informal settlements, in the townships, or even the black townships themselves. The overwhelming majority of the working class, black working class, are no longer interested to endorse the current system. These guys know that. Perhaps the real reason why they voted for this defective bill is so that we can maintain the system where they know that they can still be in parliament even if only 1/3 of the population participate in these elections. This is a very, very sad day for South Africa.
All right. Gentlemen, sadly, we've run out of time. We'll leave it there. To both of you, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the bill has been passed in Parliament. It's supposed to have complied with the order by the Constitutional Court to say that you can vote for an independent candidate who doesn't belong to a political party. On paper, it looks as if that's the scenario, but on closer inspection, we're getting a sense that the rules have been played in such a way that it's going to make it almost impossible for independence to prevail. All right, we'll leave that there. It's a story we'll definitely carry on following for you.